Hi, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to Positive People with Positive Minds for Serenity Radio. I can't even get my words out today, but we'll get there in the end. It's all going to be good fun. So the way I look at it is I've been working in sales and marketing for about 25 years in Ireland and the UK. And what I've actually found is some of the most effective salespeople out there have something slightly different. They have a different mindset. They think in positive ways, and they look at and view the world in a slightly different way. When things are not going quite well, they seem to just buckle up and move on forward and just get on with things, while other people find it a little bit more challenging in a way. So to have a look at those things is always quite fun. And today, my very special guest, I have Julia Papworth on board, and we're going to have some really fun conversation for the next 45 minutes, and I'm sure there'll be a few surprises there, and there'll be a few interesting conversations. So welcome.
Thank you, Jason.
I've got a little bit of blurb about you, but I'm sure you're going to elevate what I'm going to say, and I'm going to probably miss out a few things, but that's fine, because we've got a good 45 minutes of some wonderful conversation, and I think it's going to be great, and I'm really looking forward to it. So you're an experienced lecturer in coaching psychology with a demonstrated history of working in the higher education industry, education sector, skilled in executive development, teaching and learning, training, delivery, management, behavioral change. I'm a strong community and social service professional with an MA focused on coaching at Kingston University. Wow, you got some incredible eclectic skills there. So you've worked in this area, looking back at your LinkedIn profile, for a good number of years. I can see you're qualified teaching for over 20 years, and you studied movement, dance, energy work, intuitive practice, including Reiki, EFT, which is emotional freedom technique, and neuro-linguistic program. That's my area. I've studied EFT to a little bit of an extent, but that's really good, fun tapping. So, Julia, thank you and welcome. Just a question about you. You've got a really good collective experience over the last 20 years. So tell me a little bit, before you got into this and before you got into your 20-year history, tell me a little bit before that, and what anchored you into the space of getting into this?
Well, I think we all have life experiences, don't we, since we're small all the way through, and those life experiences can create change if you're, willing to take a look at yourself. And I decided I'd be a teacher when I was 7 because of I had a really nasty and bullying teacher who used to humiliation techniques all the time and isolation and stuff like that. And I remember looking at her one day, and after she'd done a number of different things, and I remember looking at her and I said, I'm going to be a teacher one day, and I'm never going to be a teacher like you. And it was a really impactful change. So I got isolated quite a bit more. And then I I was good at sport and dance and stuff and just loved doing it. So I got into teaching. But what I discovered in that time was that I often used to get the children that other teachers couldn't necessarily deal with, like the mouthy ones and the ones with behavioural problems. But I also used to find that I have a little stream of kids wanting to talk. So I had a natural propensity to listen, especially to like emotional issues and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I think it's because I had an empathy with them, because they were, I'd been through some of their similar stuff as well, especially at school. And then I discovered NLP and I'm an innately curious person, so I'm not necessarily going to take what someone else says. I want to go and experience it for myself first. And so I've lived all over the world teaching, which has been a real bonus because I like travel and stuff. And I was already into Buddhism and Taoism and trying to understand, like, why am I here? What's my purpose? Those kinds of questions. And I did the NLP training all the way through till trainer's trainer. So I'm a trainer of NLP. And then I did my master's degree in coaching and got into coaching, which I've been doing for the last 10 years, because really what it did was it magnified what I was already doing. Mm-hmm. But as a result of that, the coaching, I've realized that nobody just turns up to coaching, or very few people, with just the positive outlook about what they want, where they're going. So I recognize that we all come with our histories, and sometimes those histories are very unresolved. So I then did training in psychotherapy as well, which I'm just completing at the moment with some dissertations, and I look at the whole picture and understand, that we need healing. We need to grow in a current place in time before we can really bloom. And coming into the positive psychology world as well, because the course that I teach on is coaching and positive psychology. I remember in my interview, I was like, I'm positive psychology. And when they were explaining, it's like, oh yeah, I've been doing that for years, but I didn't realize it had a name. And they were laughing because I was so honest. But then it's, I'm sort of bringing all of that together now, and I'm an adventurer. I'm a discoverer. I like to go and test things and try things and see if they work. And if they don't work, I always ask the question, why isn't it working? What's missing? So I have a lot of philosophical discussions with my students, and I am a teacher through and through, not in the formalized educative sense necessarily, but I love sharing. I love listening. I love talking, So that's kind of me.
Tell that's a wonderful array of learning experience. So, what put you into the state of going, I'm very curious about things? What there's other things that's gone on, and it's gone. That's a really wonderful thing to actually have, and to actually go, oh, I've done NLP, but that's just not good enough. I'm curious to find out more about psychotherapy or positive psychology, or really understanding how to coach people and understand people and what's going on behind the hood. So that itself, I want to go underneath the hood today and find out a little bit more about what you can do, and also to help people listening to this, because this podcast is really enabled for giving back. And the way I like to look at it is, if you can give back some golden nuggets of information along this route and along this path, I call it feed forward, which is the Marshall Goldsmith terminology. And the more you can give back, the better that you receive in whichever format that it comes back into you. But really, for the listeners today, it's to sort of unpackage what you do, so enable them that they can learn, and then you can give them a gift, however they utilize that, if I can get my words out today, but however they can utilize that, I think that's the better for them. So unpack some of that information for me, if you could.
I think one of the things is I've always lived life with a whole range of emotions.
Okay.
And was sort of brought up with some of those emotions were bad, like you're a bad person if you have those emotions, or feeling like you shouldn't have certain emotions. So when I was younger, I had rage, but I used to hide it. Nobody saw it. And I used to lose my temper at home and things like this. But also I have a generalized sense of just sort of quite natural contentment as well. So I've always been really curious how society has a tendency to label like an emotion that we have, which is basically the body giving us sensations. We have feelings and we cognitize those, or if you like, we create an understanding about that and call it an emotion, but our body has the feelings first. And I've always been curious as to why is something good, or why is something bad, why is something negative, why is something positive, because I don't think we can create structures that are one or the other. Is we all have a range of emotions, but we need to be able to admit to them in order to be able to deal with them. So the emotional part is like, if we are able to understand, so for example, let's take anger, right? Oh, I'm angry. Oh, he's an angry person. She's an angry person. Oh, you need anger management. Oh, I couldn't work with him. He's so angry. We have lots of stuff that goes on about anger as an example. Oh, I'm frustrated. Similar thing. Frustration leads to anger. When I say to people, okay, well, how are you doing your anger? If you were going to leave me doing your anger while you went on holiday, what would you be doing? Are you being resentful and bitter? Are you being nasty and critical of others? Are you being despondent and sitting back and feeling sorry for yourself? Are you being angry by throwing things around? Are you being angry by being aggressive? Are you being angry by being really helpful to others but bitter underneath? How is anger manifesting in your life? Because it's when we recognize our behavioral patterns, because they're the things that impact others as well as ourselves, when we're able to actually get really honest and go, oh, I'm being really sour, or I'm being really jealous, or I'm being envious, or it's the behavioral side of that emotion, then we can actually do something about that. And that's
the question is, how would you recognize that in yourself when you actually when it's actually happening?
I think we often will recognize it after it's happened, but as you engage in that process of self-reflection, we start to be aware of when it's happening. So if I become critical and intolerant of somebody, I'll be like, oh, in my own self-talk about somebody else, and then I'll go, oh, Julia, you're being critical and intolerant.
Dad? I go to Adam. Can Adam come here?
Yeah.
That's what this is. Life at home, being at home, trying to do interviews. I'm at the dog park, and you got your children.
Yeah, when the doors close, I tell them not to come in, and what do? Is they hear come in, and that's the last thing that they hear in sort of the communication. It's the same as don't run. And you go, why did I say that? I know this ought to be true. It's sometimes the language that we use, and we're all experts in this field, and what we slip up at times when the emotions get a little bit away with us. So based on that, how would you, I know we sort of butted in there, but how would you deal with the internal dialogue and how to change that? And it's all to do with those emotions of anxiety and those heightened awareness of emotions that sometimes you forget, and you get, I like to call it a brain fart moment, but you call it what you like in an academic sense. So how would you go about that in terms so the listeners can understand?
So the emotion goes on in the moment unconsciously because it's a reaction. Yeah. It's pre-programmed into us, so we react in a certain way with those behaviors and the emotions, and but we need to train ourselves to be observant of those emotions so that we can catch them earlier. So instead of it going on for a period of time and then maybe we don't realize it at all, we actually need to train ourselves so we can catch it in the moment and choose something different. So, and there's lots and lots of different ways, and that's to do with the healing works. There's lots of different ways in which we can become aware of what our emotions and our behaviors associated with those emotions are, so that we can actually do something about it. So one of the things that I use a lot is batch flower remedies. I'm a batch flower practitioner.
So for people that don't know, because I don't know, can you explain to me what that actually is?
Yeah, so batch flower remedies were created by a chap called Dr. Edward Batch, who was a virologist and bacteriologist. He was also a Harley Street practitioner. This was in the 1930s, and he realized that in medicine often treats the outcomes, but actually we need to look at the causes, and he saw that most of the causes of physical illness were related to our emotional state. And of course that's being proved now with the Heart Math Institute, etc., etc. So he devised 38 individual flower remedies which are homeopathic, that you can take specifically related to the emotions that you have at any given time. And they can be taken in combination as well.
And what sort of flower remedies are they specifically? Just give me an example.
So some are devised from trees, some are devised straight from flowers. So, for example, clematis. You know, we often see clematis in the garden, and one of the flowers is clematis, and the flower itself is distilled. The essence of the flower is distilled and then bottled, and then you take a couple of drops of those, about four or five times a day, related to the particular emotion that you're having. So clematis is very good for, when you're not really present in the moment. We often say, to children, oh, dilly daydream, but actually, are they in a creative space, or have they disconnected from their current? And if that becomes a problem, then you would take clematis for it. So I think with the emotions, it's not necessarily that it's a positive emotion or it's a negative emotion. It's a feeling from the body. We give it a name. and is it a problem for you? And if it's a problem for you, then it's about, all right, what do I do now so that it doesn't become a problem for you? So it's when things get out of balance. And batch flower remedies help to target in. There's 38 different remedies. They help to target in on all of the different ways in which we can express our emotions when they.
So welcome back to Positive People with Positive Minds, and today my very, very special guest. I'm going to say very for the third time because according to Influence and Persuasion, 3 times is really impactful. Apparently, that's what I hear. So Julia, so we were talking about batch therapies, and I've actually got this. I got this from the shop the other day. It's called Focus, and it smells of eucalyptus oils. And apparently, you put it on your temples here and all that, and gives you the waft of focus. But it's got. I can't actually read the chemicals that are actually on there, but I think it's eucalyptus. There's a lot of other flowers out there that also stimulate the mind, and also mint is very good for peppermint. If you leave the aroma in the room, it's supposed to be very good for when you're working and focusing hard. There's lots of other remedies like that, so I've heard and read before in the past. Any other sort of tips to keep your head in the right space?
Well, in relation to the essences, so we've got the aromatherapy whole school,
Yeah.
but that's not something I'm qualified to talk about.
Okay.
But in terms of how do you keep your own headspace, I think it's about partly is routine and structure.
Okay.
It doesn't mean you've got to have a set routine every day. It means there needs to be some level of self-care. So understanding your own mental, emotional, physical place, and then realizing where perhaps you don't care for it or do care for it, and then creating some structures around that. So I do transcendental meditation, batch flower remedies, yoga, I walk the dog outside, get outside as much as I can, getting away from people who, everybody has their ups and downs. There's not an issue with that, but it's when you work with people or around people, and you kind of go, oh God, every time, and you think, well, why keep those people in your life? I know that, and sometimes that that can be family, but it's about creating really strong boundaries about how others make you feel, rather than blaming them. It's just recognizing that actually some people you just don't really vibe with. So keeping those, those that you don't vibe with, try and keep them to a minimum as much as possible. And those you do vibe with, spend time with them, because that's to do with our environmental factors. Therapy, go and have therapy. Give yourself the space of an hour, or coaching an hour, or consistently over a period of time to actually understand what's going on in your world and how you can help yourself. At the end of the day, it's about helping yourself. A therapist can't do it for you. A batch flower therapist can't do it for you. A coach can't do it for you. You have to be willing to do the work, and to do the work, you have to go to your feelings. And that is what people don't want to do, because that's where the pain sits. But if you do that, it's actually not that painful, and you start to get some results.
There's a lot of, from what I've understood, it's ego, which it's the strong people and these strong leaders in these big organizations. They're carrying the burden of this big ego that they know it all, and they should know it all, but they don't actually let go sometimes and say, look, I don't know it all. I need some help. And this is all quite big things now in organizations to have a coach. But in these smaller SME businesses that I've worked with, they're the people that actually need the help. They don't have the global company that likes of LinkedIn. They're very good at supporting their people by having coaching, and all of these big multinationals, specifically the tech companies. But my worry and my concern is the smaller SME businesses out there that don't necessarily have this, and they have these big broad shoulders and they think the world rides on them. What sort of advice could you give back to these types of people to even take the first step? Because I think it's the first step which is always the biggest step to take into sort of a larger world where you can actually feed back into your emotions and feel like everything is actually all right, really, in the end, rather than it all spinning around in your head. What could you give back to that or to them?
When you've had a conversation with somebody, is the impact of that conversation detrimental to that person's well-being or supportive of their well-being? Can you separate decisions out that you have to make, towards the, return on investment, etc., etc.? Those decisions have to be made, but it's the impact that it has upon the people around you. And so there's being able to look at yourself and question what's going on there and how do you resolve that. And if you don't care, then you're not going to have people underneath you or around you that want to support you in the end. So you'll start to see tensions and frictions in others. So it's a little bit like, when you walk in nature, you say, don't just leave footprints. It's the same with leadership. Don't leave your rubbish behind, just leave footprints. And also, it's nobody can know it all ever, and everyone makes mistakes. And actually, I think the true strength of a good leader is when they can go, do you know what, I really messed up there. Let's correct it, because it's not in the identification of it's a mistake. I think it's in the identification of being able to create solutions that are good for the business and don't hurt other people in the process.
So what types of things would you say to people like that? What sort of don't go through the whole coaching day or whatever, but give some.
How long we got?
How long we got? Yeah, I know.
I don't. You see, as a coach, I would be more accustomed to calling somebody out gently by giving them feedback about the behavior that I see going on right in front of me. And I'm not frightened to do that as a coach and just say, look, one of the things I've noticed is, are you all right if I give you that feedback? In terms of giving other people tips, I think we need to look in on ourselves. I could say to you, I don't think you should do this, but it's your ability to look in on yourself and understand the impact that you're having is the most important thing. And there will be people who go through life who will refuse to do that, and we must also accept that that's part of their life journey as it sits at the moment, and go, okay, but the only person we can change is ourselves.
Of course.
We can be irritated by others, but we need to look at why does that trigger us? What's the cause of that inside ourselves? And then go and do that work. Go and all those things I was talking about before, find the solutions that are really going to help you. But denial, just pretending it doesn't happen because it doesn't suit your narrative, isn't going to take the role forwards, the business forwards, the job forwards, your health forwards, well-being forwards. Denial is a static energy. It doesn't do anything for you.
So what would be the first natural step for people that are just up in that space at the moment, and they're having all these thoughts going around and stress is going up, they don't sleep at night, and this, that, and the other? What would be an organic step for them to do, as to reach out to someone or something, or a body or whatever? Because you could go, I'm going to do Reiki and that might relieve that, or I could do this. I'm not quite sure. What would they need to do? What would you suggest for them to do in a similar situation to that? I know it's quite generic, but if I was thinking of it right now and I was in that sort of space and going, Jesus, what do I need to do?
I'd probably reach out towards somebody else. So somebody who's a coach or a therapist, but not just take the first person you find, but be really clear on what you want to do, and then see if you vibe with that person, because a lot of our stuff can be resolved by just simply having the space with somebody who understands us and listens to us, to have that conversation and be able to articulate it and talk about it and kind of go, oh, it wasn't so bad as I'd got it going on in my head. So I think finding a space, a confidant, a mentor, somebody that you can actually, now in big organizations, my brain walks too fast. In big organizations, it might be difficult for them to find somebody in the organization who can do that. So then go to an external coach. Go to somebody who doesn't have a buy-in or a bias, but a place that's safe, that you can actually just get out what you're thinking and feeling, and then be able to say, and this is what I want to do about it. And I do have these resources and I don't have these resources. I think it comes down to a fundamental sense of, we talk about the word vulnerability, but vulnerability is not like, oh, I'm vulnerable, but being able to say, this is where, we put our hands up, this is where I am, and I don't know how to get myself out of it. But I do know where I am and I do know what I want. It's just that space in between is it's too much for me right now, and I need some support to do that. And I think the whole broad shoulders, I have to carry the load is, in Batch Flowers, we'd call that an oak personality. And if you think about oak trees, they stand strong, they weather all the storms, you know, through thick and thin, they go on for years and years, but oaks rot from the inside out.
That makes sense. Yeah, no, I understand that. I wonder what sort of flower am I? Well, I wonder what mine is.
We don't have time.
No, we don't have time. I'm quite intrigued. I'm fascinated, and it's my sense of curiosity to find that out. But maybe that's a conversation for another point. So you go through that, and you started to get the authenticity out. But I always find authenticity is really to be yourself, really, and with no pretense and nothing else around you, just to be in your own skin and being happy who you are. It's taken me 50 years to be like that, so it's taken me a long while, but wish I'd helped from my 20s, and that's just the way it is. But how would you feel about advising people that are going through that? And there might be listeners here now, and especially if they're in central London, which is all big and stressful, that's why I moved out. How do you advise them to just get a little bit of relief, sensory relief around that? What would you advise them to do? Because it is all big pressure and all of that. How would you go about saying that to people like that?
Take a step back and look at your whole life. Look at your children, look at your parents, look at your kids, look at the environment that you sit in, look at the office that you work in, etc., etc. Take a step back from it and you go, why am I doing this? Why? What's it all for? And we can give very good answers to that, like, well, I've got a house and I've got children and I've got, okay, is everybody in that happy? You know, why am I doing it? What's the bigger purpose of all of this? When I get to 50, you know, what then? When I get to 60, what then? When you get to the end of your own life and you look back and you go, oh, I've got a lovely big house and I've got a lovely big car. Yeah, and what have you? You're stressed out, you've got diabetes, you've got heart conditions, your health isn't all that, your kids don't talk to you. So what did you do it all for? We do it a lot of the time to meet expectations that we were told we needed to meet when we were children. And actually, I think part of the work certainly that I do is I really challenge that and go, okay, that's somebody else's expectation. What's your expectation of life? And you said earlier on, you know, when we say be authentic and find yourself, is I don't think, you know, finding ourselves is a lot of the time we don't often know who we are because of all the other voices that have interceded in the meantime. You know, well, you should be like that, you shouldn't be like that, you should do this. Is actually come into ourselves and do that discovery work to say, why am I doing all this? Who am I doing it for? I've seen people save all their lives and put their money in a pension pot only for it to go kapoof and they've lost a lot. And I think, well, I had a great time sailing yachts in Australia for a year. Do you know what I mean? It's like, fine, you've got your son behind you there.
He's got, that's my internal dialogue going there.
It's why are you doing it? And if you know, we can always say, well, I'm doing it because I need more money. I'm doing it because, you know, but at the end of the day, are you enjoying what you're doing each day that you go in and do it? And if you're not, then have a good look at it. And people say, well, that's very, very simplistic, but it's not. It's a choice. It's a choice that you make, and you're not finding yourself. I don't think you're discovering who you are with every step that you take. If I take I went to live in France because I couldn't speak French. I was told at school I was too stupid to do it. How ironic. So I said, right, I'll go to France and I'll live there for a year. And I rocked up with zero French. And by the time I left, had good conversational French. It was 10 years ago. I lost it now. But the point is I discovered that as a result of actually doing it, of walking that path, of going there and finding out what had happened. And I think that's it, is like, what is it that you would like? What path would you like to walk? What do you really want to be doing? Not for a job, not for this, not for that, but who are you? And are you living that reality? I made that decision when I was 7 because of the experience that I had as a teacher. But actually, you know what? If I'm in the park and kids are kicking a football around, I'm like, oh, I always want to get in there and help them to learn. I can't help myself but teach. I love it. I love learning. I love, so when I'm doing that, I could teach for 24 hours and probably wouldn't even realize I hadn't slept.
That's awesome.
And that's flow.
That is absolutely flow in every sense of the word. We're just going to come back. So we're back, and I really appreciate this conversation. It's very rich and enlightening, and I love this sort of stuff. It's it puts me into the flow state because I love conversations like this, because the more I learn, the more I know, and sort of the better it feeds into me, so I can give help and advice back to people. Because that's where I like to be, in the sort of the feed forward state where I can really sort of help. And we spoke about that flow state when you just wake up in the morning and you love what you do, and then before you know it, it's 9 o'clock at night. You go, what happened in that day? What did I do? I can't remember. It's almost time for bed, and it's like bang, that day's really gone. So tell me and describe to me, I know we discussed in terms of what you do, but tell me what you do and how can people really understand what you do? Because you do lots of things, but in simplistic ways as possible, so people can really understand and go, wow, that's really cool.
I think the easiest way is I understand people. And it's very difficult sometimes in life when you're struggling with something. All you really want is someone to understand you. And understanding comes not from learning in books, but understanding comes from experiences. When you've walked a path and you've struggled and you've tripped and you've fallen and you've got back up and you've found ways out, or you've found better ways forward. When somebody listens to that, I think, oh yeah, she gets me. And that is the first part to doing any healing work or any growth work, is just to feel like you're being understood, because what it does is it creates a level of safety. So I give people, if you like, I give them my time and my ears and my consciousness and my intuition, so that they feel understood. They feel somebody gets them. Because once you have that, then they can start to do the development work themselves. Now, I can call that psychotherapy. I can call that coaching. I can call that whatever I like. Yeah, I do it in my batch flower remedies. But I care about other people and I understand them. And when I don't understand somebody's life path, I'll just say to them, I'm probably not the best person to work with, because I don't really get where you're coming from. Yeah. You know, if somebody said to me, "Oh, I work on a fox fur farm," I'd be like, "Okay, we're not going to vibe."
No, forget about it. Speak to someone else. Yeah, I'm not into that. Yeah, no.
I think it's having conversations, and it's being in those conversations. I don't hold any judgments, and I'm so self-aware that if judgments do come up, I go and look at those for myself afterwards. And then if you've got that safe space, then somebody can actually start to talk and say, do you know what I really want to be doing is this, and go, okay, let's work with that. I taught a student once who was like going off to university, and she's like, oh, I'm going off to university. And it's like, I picked up her energy wasn't right. And I said, do you really want to go to university? And she's like, no, I just want to be with my horse. And then when we actually went into that and I listened and discovered it, what she wanted to do was natural horsemanship. So I said, well, why don't you just go find out about that then? And she did. And within 2 weeks, she had manifested, whatever you want to call it, to be able to take her beautiful, great big 17-2 horse down to Spain to learn natural horsemanship. And they offered her accommodation and a job. And she's like, oh, I've got to tell my parents I'm not going to university. I said, you got, tell your parents that you're taking the life that you were born to lead.
Yeah.
So I suppose I help people find their there's not a chalkboard in the sky that says this is your purpose. I think we have our experiences and it shapes who we are on our way, but I think there's a groove that we sit in, and I help people find their groove, because when you're in that and you love doing what you're doing, you don't even you don't have to say, oh, I'm doing this because I want to be happy. You're doing it, and doing it makes you happy.
Yeah.
This happiness isn't, and I think that's key. And if you can live your life happy and in what you're doing and content, and take the bumps and the knocks and on the way, because that's what life is. Life is a learning journey. It's a process, and it's tough, and we have to have the strategy to be able to work through those things. So
that takes a lot of time and effort, and if I had a hat on, I'd applaud you with that and take my hat off to you, because that's it's a special gift that you're giving back to people to help them find their own path. And I wish I had that as a young kid. I thought I had it, but then I got distracted by other stuff that got in the way, and then got back on track, and then other stuff happened. And that's for someone like you to actually help people along that and keep them back on track and keep them onto their own spiritual guidance, or their enlightened path, or whichever path that they choose, to get them to where they want to go, as opposed to being told, like parents and peer pressure and all of that. You have all those internal dialogues, as you say, all the time, and they hit you and you go, oh, that seems like a good, I'd try that, and I'd try that, and that doesn't seem to work. But going to someone like you will give some real gift back, and saying that is what I want to do. And it takes a lot of time and effort. And again, I wish I had that as an empowerment force to go. It's only now that I really like what I do. So I have a big smile on my face, which is great. So look, all this 5-6 months, how would you see and perceive that? And how have you overcome this crazy, mad, silly, ridiculous times that we've been going through over the last 6 months? Well, our 6-month anniversary should ring a bell here, but it's been a bit of a strange one, really. I've dealt with it really well myself, I think. But what about others? How do you feed forward to that to others?
I think everybody's had a very different experience. Some people have been locked down, completely isolated on their own. Other people have been in groups and teams. Other people have been able to get out and do things. Other people have been locked in. So when we look at the whole situation, there is a massive array of situations, environments that people have found themselves in. And the question I ask myself is, and I suppose it's always the same, is what is this showing me? What can I learn from it? And what came out for me was that old anger I talked about. That came out after about 12 weeks. And after about 2, because it was like, oh my God, I go from the bedroom to the same room, and I'm doing yoga in that room, and I'm teaching online, and I'm doing supervision in that room, and doing everything, and it just got like, and I thought, okay. And what it did was it made me have a bit of a reevaluation about what was important to me and what was I doing this for. And it actually triggered a whole new sort of she's off on another pathway, and it's not something new, it's just a development from where I am, because we get very stuck, and it's normal to be like that, and sometimes we need things like this. And I know there's a lot of people who go, oh, you don't know what it was like. No, we don't know what it was like for everybody, and nor could we ever be expected to do so. But it would be an impetus for change. And change is going to happen anyway, whether you like it or not. And it's your level of ability to accept that and see it as, I see life as a crazy experiment, And I remember once when I first learned about Buddhism, and they said, well, you're going to get reincarnated. And I went, right, I'm going to learn as much as I can this life to reduce the number of times I have to be reincarnated. And that's how I tend to sort of look at things, like, how do I make this as efficient as possible? I don't think we can give advice to anybody in these situations, other than, if you can reach out and have some support, and in whatever direction you want. But it is showing you what needs to be healed a lot of the time. And we all have healing to do. Anybody who says they don't have baggage is delusional. You know, we all have it at some level, and we need to be able to look at that. And it's nothing more than our stress responses. It's our nervous system stress responses. And if we can do the healing at that level with the stories, then we can move our lives forward. And I think that's a very, very, very brave thing to do, is to go, yeah, actually, you know what? I need some help here, and that's okay. And there's nothing to be ashamed of it at all.
I think that's probably the best thing that you can possibly do for yourself, and to realize that life has its ups and downs and twists and turns, and whatever happens. But if you're given the tools, and if you're given the right sort of tools, that you can slowly deal with them, you're not ever going to be perfect. And I think sometimes when you feel like you need to be perfect, that's when the problems and challenges actually happen, because you're striving for something, because perfection you're never going to reach, because it's just out there. And to live within your day and to live within your realms of what's the best I can do right now is sometimes the best advice you can give back. And that's the advice that I've been given going forward. I've also, when I was listening to a Paul McKenna podcast, and he was suggesting, especially at home, is to use certain parts of the room for certain types of tasks. So the bedroom should not be for anything else but the bedroom. I've been working in my bedroom, and you got work, and then you got bed, and you got work, then bed, and it doesn't quite work. And then you have other areas of the couch other areas of the house that you should be able to anchor into a different positive state. What sort of advice could you give on those? That's if I've given the right explanation of that, if I can speak properly.
I think it's a very valid piece of advice, that we can anchor different states or way of being in different spaces in the house. It's not possible for everybody to be able to do that. You know, if your desk is in one space, it's about finding other ways. So if you're exercising inside, can you exercise outside? Or you know, it's trying to find the best possible place. You know, look, which way are you facing when you do your exercise, and which feels best, and do it facing that way. I know that sounds a bit strange, but we have our own intuitive sense about how something feels. It's trying to find the best feeling place that we can in anything that we do. You know, it's like when you sleep in a bed and you go somewhere, you sleep in a hotel and you go, oh no, the bed feels a bit, I want to sleep this way round. It's those intuitive feeling senses that can actually guide us a great deal of the time to the right way in times for doing things. So if I'm walking the dog and I want to go further and I don't have a meeting to go to, I go, I'll walk further today. I'll do the work later. I know that sounds a bit flippant, but it'll get done, and it will get done well. But we need to check in with our intuition, check in with how we're feeling at any given point. Our feelings that we are key to everything. And when we really feel feelings that we don't want to deal with, humans suppress it with drink, with alcohol, with rage, with all of, you know, very long list. Or actually, if we go into the feelings are our guidance system that's going to tell us what needs to be healed and what is right for us. So instead of feel like you're paddling a canoe upstream, you just allow the current to take you. And I think that's what I've had to do. You know, I've allowed the current to take me. What pushes me off of that is other people going, oh, you shouldn't be doing this, and they go, oh, maybe I shouldn't, and they go, oh, hang on a minute, I'm against the current again. No, go back to the current.
I understand that.
Your life journey. It's your life. And you know what, some people aren't ready for it. You can give them all the tools ever on the planet, and they will actually almost push against you because they don't want the help. Like take a horse to water, won't let it drink, and that's also okay. That's part of their life journey.
Yeah, sometimes you can do only certain degree. You can help them. You can ask. The biggest thing that I've always been taught is not giving people advice, because you know what happens with people giving advice? You're nodding your head, so you know. And they go, yeah, and they do the reverse thing that you suggest for them to do. Sometimes you just leave those people alone and go. Like your parents will try and install advice onto you and this, that, and that. But some of it's good and some of it's indifferent. But you know, it's been sort of what I was going to say, it's been an absolutely I could actually, I've got so many questions in my head and we were running out of time now. I wish I had more time with you, because I'd love to just jump inside your head and go, wow.
You don't want to go in there.
No, maybe I'll start around the outside and just see what's going on, and then pull out what I need to, and then and leave other bits in there. So tell me a little bit about how people can actually find out a little bit more about yourself.
Well, I'm first of all, I sort of use LinkedIn, and I work at the University of East London, so I lecture there on a master's degree program in positive psychology and coaching psychology. So if that's something anybody finds interesting, come and join the course. It's great. Okay. Small promotion. No, but in terms of actually working with me, I work as a batch flower practitioner, and I work in, obviously do coaching with clients. Mm-hmm. I'm just actually in the process of completing a brand new website at the moment. So the best way to do it is to follow me on Instagram. It's funny, I've done this job and I've been really, had a lot of clients over the last 10 years, and I've never had a website. It's all come word of mouth. So, it's that old adage, isn't it, about the child walking down the beach with all the starfish, and then he picks up the starfish and puts it in the ocean, and his friend says, well, that's not going to help all the others. He says, yeah, but it helps that one. And that was my motto when I used to teach, was if I've talked and somebody's resonated with it and it's only one person, then if it helps that one person, then I've done a good job. So Instagram is probably the best way at the moment. Just follow, connect, send a message, whatever, and I'll get back. And then once I've finished my website, then people can get to me through there for consultations.
Wow, that sounds like everyone can connect through to you anyway. So it's sometimes the best form of advertising is, word of mouth. And obviously that's what worked extremely well for you. So I really thank you for being my guest today on Positive People with Positive Minds for Serenity Radio. And I'm sure when they hear this in the next few weeks, they'll be asking a lot more, because I find it extremely fascinating. So thank you once again.
Thank you.